Welcome, joyful creators and Call the Midwife friends. Welcome to Funday Monday, part 4 of the Midwife Blocks of Love blanket. Today we are going to create the Dragonfly granny square. And I'll show this again in just a minute after we go over what we'll need. But you'll need the main color of yarn that you're going to make your granny square in, the color of yarn that you're going to use as the border. You'll continue to need your H 5mm hook, and you'll need scissors and a darning needle, stitch marker, and of course we always start out with lotion to moisturize and keep our hands hydrated. All right, so I want you to go ahead and get started. We're going to clear off the craft table, and I'm going to pause the video while I get my craft table ready. You want to go ahead and grab your main color and chain 28. And when you have your craft table ready, you've chained your 28 of your main color, then I will meet back up with you and we'll get started on our Dragonfly granny square. When you have your chain of 28, we're going to go ahead and get started. I do know that it's going to be hard to see a little bit with this navy blue yarn, and I do apologize for that. So I will try to keep it as close to the camera as I can and go as slow as possible. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to work a double crochet into the 7th chain from the hook. So we're going to skip 6. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and into this 7th chain we are going to work a double crochet. Now the 6 chains that we skipped are going to count as 2 chains on the bottom for foundation. The next 2 chains is going to count as a double crochet on this end, and then the top 2 chains, which would be 5 and 6, are going to count as the chain 2 to create the first spacer. After we've made that double crochet, we're going to chain 1, and then we're going to skip a stitch, and into this very next stitch we're going to work a double crochet. We're going to chain 1, we're going to skip the next stitch, and in the next one we're going to work a double crochet. And we're going to continue doing this all the way down until we get to the very last 3 remaining stitches. So we're going to work a double crochet, chain 1, skip the next stitch, and in the next one work a double crochet, chain 1, skip the next stitch, and go into the next stitch and work a double crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, work a double crochet. I know it looks like my work is all over the place, but I'm trying to not hold it so tightly so that you can see what I'm doing. And I am going to just take a moment here and make sure our focus is the best and sharp so that you can see everything. There we go. All right, we're going to chain 1, skip the next stitch, work a double crochet, trying to keep my fingers out the way so you can see as much as possible as well. Chain 1, skip a stitch, and in the next one work a double crochet. And we are now down to the last 3 stitches. We've got 1, 2, and 3 remaining. Again, it is really hard to see with this. Let me see if I can change the lighting a little bit. Maybe that will help. Okay. So we're going to chain 2, and this chain 2 will count as what we're going to call a spacer, just like we did on the other granny squares that we made. And we're going to skip those next 2 chains, and in the very last one we're going to work a double crochet. And this completes our first row. Just to make sure that you're on the same as me, we should have 10 double crochets in between our spacers. So these are our spacers right here. Let me get this other yarn out the way. All right, these are our spacers. So we should have 10 double crochets in the center here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So that's what we have. And then we have our spacers, and then we have double crochets on the end. So technically that gives us a total of 12 double crochets for the row. But the main thing we're focusing on is the 10 that were in the center here. We're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Turn our work. Begin row 2. We are going to skip these first 2 chains right here that create our spacer, and we're going to come right into this first double crochet, and we're going to work a double crochet. Okay, we're going to work a double crochet into this chain 1 space stitch, and I would actually work into the stitch versus the space. When you work into the stitch, it just gives your work a nicer, cleaner edge than if you were working into just the space. We're going to crochet into the very next double crochet, and we're going to crochet into the next chain 1 stitch, and we're going to work into the next double crochet, and we're going to work into the next chain 1 stitch, and we're going to keep working double crochets into each double crochet and chain 1 stitch all the way down until we have a total of 19 double crochets in between our spacers, and we have 3 stitches remaining. Now, I know my work looks like it's kind of all over the place, but one, I don't have much to hold on to, and I'm trying to get my fingers out the way to make sure that you can see what I'm doing, even though it's hard to see with this dark colored yarn. So again, we're just working double crochets into each double crochet and chain 1 space. And now we're working our very last double crochet, and you'll see that we have 3 stitches remaining. We're going to chain 2 to create our spacer. We're going to skip these next 2 chains, and in this very last one we're going to work a double crochet. Okay, and that completes row 2. We're going to chain 4, turn our work. We're going to skip this chain 2 that creates the spacer, and right here in this first double crochet we're going to work a double crochet. Okay, and we need a total of 9 double crochets, so this makes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And now we're going to chain 1. Okay, we're going to skip the next stitch, and in the next one we're going to work a double crochet. And now we need 9 there, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. We have 3 chains remaining. We're going to chain 2 to create our spacer. We're going to skip those next 2 chains, and then in the top of the next one we're going to work a double crochet, and that completes row 3. And you can see the tail of your dragonfly starting right there. All right, to go on to the 4th row, we're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Turn your work. We're going to skip these 2 chains that create the spacer. And in this first double crochet right here, we're going to work a double crochet. Let's see if I can get my light to be a little bit brighter. Maybe that'll help too. And we need a total of 6 double crochets. So we've got 1, and now we're going to do 2, and 3, 4, 5, and 6. We're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. We're now going to skip 3. 1, 2, 3. That brings us to the stitch above where we created that space for the tail, and we're going to single crochet into that stitch. Oops. Now we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. We're going to skip 3. So 1, 2, 3. We're going to work a double crochet into the next stitch. And we're going to work a double crochet into the next 5. So that gives us 6 double crochets after our chain 3, skip 3. And there's 3, 4, 5, and 6. That brings us down to the last 3 stitches of that row. And just like we have on the previous rows, we're going to chain 2, skip 2, and work a double crochet right into that end. And that will complete row 4. And there's your dragonfly starting to come in there. We're going to chain 4 and then turn our work to begin row 5. We're going to skip these 2 chains at the beginning that create the spacer, and right here into this first double crochet we're going to work a double crochet, and we need a total of 5. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now we're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to skip the next 4 stitches. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and that takes us through that first chain 3 from the previous row. So right in the single crochet that we've created on the previous row, we're going to work another single crochet. Then we're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to skip 4. So we're going to skip these 3 chain 3s from the previous row. We're going to skip this one here, and we're going to come into the very next one and work a double crochet and make sure we have 5 going across. So that's 2, 3, 4, and 5. This brings us to having only 3 stitches left in the row. So we're going to chain 2 to create our spacer stitch. We're going to skip that first chain 2, and in the top of the next we're going to work a double crochet, and this completes row 5. Okay, and that is your dragonfly. It's kind of hard to see, but once we get the next row in, you can see it a little bit better. So we're going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to turn our work to begin row 6. We're going to mimic row 2 in that we're going to create the 19 double crochets that we had in that second row right here. Again, I know that it's so hard to see with this dark blue. All right, so we're going to skip this chain 2 right here that creates a spacer, and right here in this first double crochet we're going to work a double crochet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then working into this chain 4, we're going to keep doing our double crochets through it in the stitch itself. So 6, 7, 8, 9, and your 10th double crochet should be in the single crochet from the previous row. 10, and then working back through your chain 4s. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19, and after the 19th double crochet you should have 3 stitches remaining, which you do. So we're going to chain 2 to create a spacer. We're going to skip those next 2 chains, and then on top of the next one we're going to work a double crochet, and this completes our 6th row. So there is our dragonfly, and you can see from the one I've already made, that's what it looks like. Okay, to begin row 7, we're going to chain 4 and turn our work. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, I'm going to pull this back so we can look at it. So right now, this is where we've completed. Okay, we have this much done on the bottom half. So now we are going to add 1, 2 more rows of just 19 double crochets across. So after we have chain 4, turned our work, we skip these first 2 chains, work a double crochet into that first chain, and then we're going to work double crochets all the way across. We'll have 19. We'll stop when we have 3 chains remaining, and that will be over here. We're going to chain 2 to create our spacer. We're going to skip these first 2, work a double crochet in this end one. Then we're going to chain 4, turn our work, and we're going to repeat the same row again so that we have a total of 3 rows with 19 double crochets. When you get that finished, I will come back and meet you, and we'll continue to make the top half of our granny square with the dragonfly. So we have completed our 8th row, and I just want to show you again the difference in using the actual chain stitches versus the spaces. See how defined these little openings are? That is because we're doing it in the actual stitches versus in the spaces. If we were doing it in the spaces, it would kind of draw them together a little bit more, and it would look more like that. So the fact that we're working in those stitches is what helps open up the pattern so you can see it better. Okay, so now we are going to repeat making one more dragonfly pattern in our granny square. So at the end of row 8, you should have chained 4, and we're going to turn our work and get ready for row 9. Now, we've created the replica of row 2 for the base here, up here. So now we're ready to actually go right into the 3 rows that are going to create the dragonfly. So starting with row 9, we are going to skip these first 2 chains that create the spacer, and we're going to go right into the top of this next crochet, or the first double crochet, and make our first one. So it looks like this. We need a total of 9 double crochets, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7, 8, and 9. We're going to make this tip of our dragonfly tail. So we're going to chain 1, skip 1, go into the next stitch and work a double crochet, and we need to have 9 on this side. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Chain 2 to create your spacer. Skip the next 2 chains, and in the top of the next one, work a double crochet. And that completes row 9. Chain 4 and turn your work to begin row 10. We're going to skip these first 2 stitches that create the spacer. We're going to work a double crochet into this first double crochet, and we need 6 double crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we have 6 double crochets, 1 in each of those 6 stitches. And now we're going to start the body of our dragonfly. So after our 6 double crochets, we're going to chain 3, skip 3. Okay, so we're going to skip these next 3 stitches, and right here in the top of this chain 1 space, we are going to work a single crochet. We're then going to chain 3, and we're going to skip 3, 1, 2, 3, and then right here into the next one, we're going to work a double crochet, and we're going to do that until we have 6. So 1, go to the next stitch, 2, go to the next stitch, 3, 4, 5, and 6. That brings us down to where we have 3 stitches remaining. We're going to chain 2 to create our spacer, skip these first 2 chains, and in the top of the next one, we're going to work a double crochet. Chain 4, turn your work, and now we're ready to begin row 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yep, want to make sure I was telling you the right row. All right, so now we're going to create the top part of our dragonfly. To do that, we're going to skip these first 2 chains that make the spacer, double crochet into the first one, and we need a total of 5 double crochets. So there's 2, move into the next stitch, 3, move into the next stitch, 4, and 5. This time we're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to skip this next stitch, and we're going to skip 4 stitches altogether. So we're going to skip this next double crochet, we're going to skip this chain 3, and right here in this single crochet from the previous row, we're going to work a single crochet. Chain 4, and we're going to skip these next 4 stitches. So we're going to skip this chain 3, we're going to skip this first double crochet, and into the next one we're going to work a double crochet, and then we're going to do that once again into the next 4 stitches, working 1 double crochet. So we have a total of 5 double crochets on this side. That takes us down to the last 3 stitches, And just as we have been on all the previous other rows, we're going to chain 2, skip those last 2 stitches to create the spacer, and in the top of the next one we'll work a double crochet. And that completes row 11. Okay, and the body of our last dragonfly. Got 2 more rows to go. We're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Turn your work. To begin row 12, we're going to skip these first 2 chains that create the spacer, and in this first double crochet we're going to work a double crochet, and then we're going to work a double crochet into each stitch across. So between spacers we have a total of 19 double crochets, and that's 4, 5. We're going to go right into these chain 4s to create our double crochets. Go right into the stitch itself. 6, 7, 8, 9, and again your 10th double crochet should be right in that single crochet from the previous row. So there's 10, and then going in these chain 4s, 11, 12, 13, 14, and then 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. 3 stitches remaining. You're going to chain 2 to create your spacer. You're going to skip the next 2 chains, and in that next one work a double crochet, and that completes row 12. All right, we have just one more row to do with this color, so we're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Turn your work, and just like we did down here on row 1, we're going to create these little open blocks. To do that, we're going to skip these first 2 chains that create the spacer, and in this first double crochet we're going to work a double crochet. We're going to chain 1, skip 1, and in the next one work a double crochet, and chain 1, skip 1, and the next one work a double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, and the next one work a double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, and the next one work a double crochet, and we're just going to continue this down till we get to our spacer. And this is our last double crochet before getting to that remaining 3 stitches. We're going to chain 2 to create our spacer. We're going to skip those next 2 chains, and in the top of the next one we are going to make a double crochet. And this completes the body of our granny square. So now all we have to do is come back and add our border. So go ahead and fasten off this color, weave in your ends, and go ahead and join your border color into the top of this corner, and I'll come back and we'll get started with the border for our granny square. To start our border, we're going to come right into this last corner space that we made, and we're going to join our color that we're using for our border. Once you have it attached, I always like to slide mine down to the very edge here between the corner and that first double crochet. So chain 3, 1, 2, 3. This is going to count as a double crochet. Do another double crochet into that chain space. So now you have 2 double crochets into that chain space, or that corner space, excuse me. Chain 2 and work 2 more double crochets into that corner space. So in the corner space you'll have 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets. So a total of 4 double crochets in a chain 2 space. Okay? All right. You're going to chain 2, 1, 2. You're going to skip this next space right here. And in this next space, you're going to work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2, 1, 2. And then we're going to skip this space, and in this next space, work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3. Chain 2. We're going to skip this next space, and in this next one we're going to work 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2, and we're just going to keep repeating this till we get to the corner. Skip the space, and in the next one work 3 double crochets. Chain 2, skip this next space, and in this next space work 3 double crochets. Chain 2, skip this next space, and as you can tell, after you skip the next space, then that puts us in the corner. We're going to work our 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets. So there's our first 2 double crochets. So we're going to chain 2, and then we're going to work 2 more double crochets right into that corner space. We're going to chain 2, and now we're coming up this side. So we're going to skip this next space, and in the next one we're going to work 3 double crochets. Chain 2, skip this next space, and in the next one work 3 double crochets. And then we're going to chain 2, skip the next space, and in the next one work 3 double crochets. Chain 2, skip the next space, and in the next one work 3 double crochets. chain 2, skip the next space, and then the next one is the corner. So we're going to work 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets in that corner space. Chain 2, and now we're going to turn our square and we're going to work up this next side. We're going to skip this next space, and in the next one work 3 double crochets. Chain 2, skip the space, and the next one work 3 double crochets. Chain 2, skip the next space, and in the next one work 3 double crochets. Chain 2, skip the next space, and in the next one work 3 double crochets. Chain 2, skip the next space, and in the next one work 3 double crochets. Chain 2, skip the next space, and then in the next one is the corner, so we're going to work 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets. Then chain 2, turn your work to come up this last side where we will come back to where we started, and we're going to continue doing the same thing. Skip the next space, in the next one work 3 double crochets. Chain 2, skip the next space, and in the next one work 3 double crochets. Chain 2, skip the next space, and in the next one work 3 double crochets. Chain 2, skip the next space, and work 3 double crochets. Chain 2, skip the next space, and then you can see well, we're back to the beginning of our corner. So we're going to come to the top of this chain 3, and in the top of that chain 3 we are going to do a slip stitch. Okay, we're now going to go into this next double crochet, and we're going to do a slip stitch. And we're going to come into this chain 2 space, and we're going to do a slip stitch. And that gets us back to the center of that very first corner that we made. My light is kind of blinding out that white border, so let me see if that helps. Kinda, it's washing it out a little bit. can't really see it. Now the lighting is a little bit different and you can see it a little bit better, especially when I put my hands on it. All right, so we're going to do basically the same thing we just did around one more time. So we're slip stitch into the center, chain 2. So we are going to chain 3, and that will count as our first double crochet. We're going to go right back in and work another double crochet, chain 2, and work 2 more double crochets. Chain 2, skip these 2 double crochets, and in this next space we're going to work 3 double crochets. Chain 2. We are going to skip these next 3 double crochets, and then into the next space we're going to work 3 double crochets. Chain 2. We're going to skip the next 3 double crochets, and in this next space we're going to work 3 double crochets. Chain 2. Get some more yarn here. We're going to skip these next 3 double crochets, and into the next space we're going to work 3 double crochets. Chain 2, skip the next 3 double crochets, and in this next space work 3 double crochets. Chain 2, skip the next 3 double crochets, and in the next space work 3 double crochets. Chain 2. You're going to skip these 2 double crochets in that corner space where you have the 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets. So we're going to skip those first 2 double crochets, and in that chain 2 space we're going to do 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets. And then we're going to chain 2. We're going to skip those next 2 double crochets, and in the next space we're going to work 3 double crochets. And we're going to continue this around, chaining 2, skipping the next 3 double crochets, and in the next space make 3 double crochets, chain 2, skip 3 double crochets, chain, or do 3 double crochets in the space, and so forth. When you get to the corners, you will always you will always do 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet. So go ahead and complete that all the way around. I will meet back up with you when you get to the very beginning. Okay, so we've come back around to the beginning. Make sure before you join that you've done that chain 2, because you need that chain 2 to come across those 2 double crochets right there so it looks natural. So after you've chained 2, we're then going to come to the top of this chain 3 that we did in the beginning that created our first double crochet. we're going to go right into the top of that, and we are going to slip stitch to join. And that's going to complete our dragonfly granny square. And again, my lighting is not working very well today. It's too bright in here. So let me see if that helps a little bit more, turning those lights off. Okay. And I think it's because I've got the sun coming in front of me here. That's creating that. Trying to block it out, but it wasn't working. All right, so then all we have to do is fasten off and weave in those ends, and that block is done. Next week we will come back together and we will complete the last block, and then after that I will show you how to join your blocks together to begin creating your baby blanket. Well, this has been Funday Monday, part 4 of the Blocks of Love baby blanket for Call the Midwife. I hope that you have enjoyed this, and I look forward to coming back with you next week and continuing to work on this blanket. Until then, be joyful, stay crafty in your own way, make your own joyful creations, and I'll see you again next week. Bye, everyone.